Good evening. When I was asked to talk about entrepreneurship to a room of entrepreneurs, I didn't really know what to say at first. And I was encouraged to kind of share with you my own experiences, and perhaps therein lies some wisdom. But I thought, keep it light, have a little fun. So I was on a plane recently, and we'd just taken off. The pilot comes on, the loudspeaker, blah, blah, blah. We've reached our cruising altitude. I'm going to turn off the fasten seatbelt sign, and blah, blah, blah. I'll get back to you when we make our final descent. Puts the microphone down, clearly thought he had turned the microphone off. You can hear him turning to his co-pilot, leaning back, and be like, Jim, I could really use right now is a cup of coffee and a blowjob. And we were all horrified. Clearly, poor guy doesn't know what's going on. We're all looking at each other, and the stewardess goes running up the aisle towards the cockpit. The guy next to me yells, "Don't forget the coffee." And maybe it was just because I was thinking about the speech that I had to give, but I thought, therein lies a lesson about entrepreneurship, at least one that I've learned. It's about offense and defense. It's about playing them both at the same time. So go with me. I don't know if this works, but in this situation, the stewardess playing defense, big problem, had to use whatever she could right then and there to solve it. And you had the guy next to me kind of playing offense, given he was a wise ass, but he saw an opportunity to add something different to a conversation to change the perspective that other people viewed it. In this case, he just added humor. And I think back to the lessons I've learned as an entrepreneur and keep relearning. I think it goes back to always having to play offense and defense and do that simultaneously. People always ask, are entrepreneurs born or are they made? I don't know. I certainly wasn't born as an entrepreneur, though, so perhaps I was made as one. My journey to entrepreneurship started relatively recently and quite late in life, I'm sure relative to most of you. I wasn't the kid who was mowing lawns and starting a business with lemonade stands. I had a bunch of jobs out of university. I graduated from university 6 years ago in America, and in that time I think I've typified my generation nicely. I did propaganda and new media for a controversial prime minister in the Middle East. I built public infrastructure in East Africa. I ran one of the world's largest student activist organizations in Washington, and I joined a media startup in New York. And these were, really awesome jobs, kind of in the right place at the right time. I was given a lot of responsibility, but if I'm honest, I was never really happy. It was never really satisfying. And I always wanted more. And I think that's probably why I always thought there could be more. I hope there could be more. And that's why I never really stayed in a job very long. I never stayed in a job more than, let's say, about a year and a half. And so about 2 years ago, I was going through this process again, getting itchy at this media startup. I was doing biz dev and product development for them and their marketing. And started thinking, well, what more is there? So I went out to Silicon Valley. I had kind of all the meetings you would hope to have with all the right people, got presented with some very interesting opportunities. I remember sitting on the flight from San Francisco, the microphone, no malfunction that time, and just trying to sell myself on one of the jobs. And I realized that if I had to sell myself on one of these jobs, then it probably wasn't the right job for me. And it was kind of a hopeless moment, because I was like, well, what the hell am I going to do? So luckily, I wasn't flying back to New York to my job at the time. I was flying down to Los Angeles for the board meeting of a charity. This is an interesting charity in that it's much more of a social enterprise. It's a bunch of young, hungry guys, and they've assembled a board of really accomplished, hardcore entrepreneurs. It's not like it's kind of typical charity board. I was very much the odd man out, and over this course of this weekend, I had a bunch of very interesting conversations. One of which, though, stands out. It was with that man right there, Mr. Charles Seeley, gentleman extraordinaire and deal maker for GEP. If you want to hear some other things about him, you can talk to me after. And I was telling Charles about the fact that I was looking for something. I didn't know what I wanted. I didn't know what to look for. And he looked at me like I was an idiot. And he said, so why don't you just start something? And I have to say that it never occurred to me before. Genuinely. I think I'm a pretty smart guy, knew my options, just never had really put the pieces together. But he looked at me like a man who was drowning next to a life raft. The answer was right there. You just reach out for it. So I came up with a million reasons why that could never happen, a million buts. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't know what the goal was, And he said, just start something. So the weekend ended. The seed was planted. Went back to New York, and over the next couple of weeks and months, Charles was very generous with his time. We chatted a bunch more. I started talking to lots of other entrepreneurs I know. And before long, I left my job and started consulting. It was kind of the halfway to, I think, really being an entrepreneur. I did the only thing I knew how to do. I looked back at my whole career and said, usually I stand as the interface between a giant global idea and the public. So I'll mix a little marketing, a little digital, a little public affairs. We'll call it public engagement. We'll see who'll hire me. And coincidentally, my first few clients were London-based. It was a startup here and a think tank. And I did this for about almost a year. Frankly, I was very successful in this. I got very cool clients, the types of clients that I wanted. People were trying to change the world and were successful in doing so. And all of the time was thinking back to that offense and defense, though I didn't realize it at the time, because it went back to defining success and what that goal was, what the mission was. And I realized that being a successful consultancy, that wasn't something that really interested me. It didn't scale. The model wasn't very good. I was one person, so there was only so much we could do. So earlier this year, I made a real commitment to my company. I stopped looking for other jobs. I moved to the UK as part of GEP. At the time, we got Pottermore, which is the online world of Harry Potter, as a client, and I started hiring staff to support that work. And we went from a consultancy to an agency. Really, again, so what was our defense before became the offense. And it was thinking about now, what's the new, that was the wrong way. It was the offense to defense, sorry. What we were really good at that before that we were reaching for became our core business. And all of a sudden, we had to find a new offense. What were we striving for? What was success? And we've realized in the past 8 months as an agency, or at least I have, I don't know how my staff feels about this, that being a successful agency isn't really what I want to define as success anymore. Walking into a room with hundreds of people and my name on the door scares me, I think, more than excites me. I don't think it'll enable me to do the type of work that I think we can do. So again, we're changing our model, redefining success. Now we're starting to work with major media companies and people who own lots of IP to create new brands, refresh old brands, and own part of them in the process. And my takeaway from all of this, going back to this offense and defense, is I thought being an entrepreneur was starting something. Starting something was hard, very, very hard. I think Dan was right with that. But in retrospect, that was kind of the easy part. I started a living, breathing, growing, mutating organism that I never know where it's going to go. And I'm just trying to kind of hold on and steer it in the right direction. And I think being an entrepreneur is about evolving that thing that you've built, whether it's responding to market forces, investors, your new ideas, and continuing to build something of value, both for the market, but also for yourselves and for your employees. And I think now, as an entrepreneur, I can't imagine doing anything else. I have no idea what my business is going to evolve into, but wherever it's going, it's been extremely exciting. And living in the UK now for 8 months has meant some very simple, practical things, like I have to get on a plane a whole lot less. It's much easier to run a global business from here with time zones and traveling. And being part of this community of entrepreneurs, of the GEP, the broader kind of East London scene, has been a lot of fun. And I think that as entrepreneurs, it's very easy to kind of wallow in how hard it is, how difficult it is, but it's also a hell of a lot of fun. And I've met a lot of really great people who are doing that together, we're doing it at the same time, and I think we're growing as a community, which has been really exciting. I tell people about London now, and they used to be a little more shocked that, as an entrepreneur I was here, and now they're like, oh, I want to come too, and it's amazing how that dialogue is changing. So no huge deep thoughts, but that's kind of been my perspective, learning about playing offense and defense at the same time, and really, I guess, owning the fact now that I'm an entrepreneur, even if I can't really spell it. So thank you.